Welcome to Sleepy Philosophy, where we explore life's deepest questions in the gentlest way possible. Tonight we're drifting into one of the most unsettling thought experiments ever conceived, a question that cuts to the very heart of what makes life worth living. So settle in, let your breathing slow, and prepare to question everything you think you know about happiness, reality, and the nature of a meaningful existence. Imagine, if you will, that tomorrow morning you wake up to find a team of scientists at your door. They're not here to harm you or to take anything away. Instead, they've come to offer you something extraordinary, something that sounds too good to be true, yet they insist it's entirely real. They want to give you a perfect life. Not just a better life, mind you. Not simply an improved version of your current existence with fewer problems and more pleasures. No, they're offering you something far more radical. A life where every single moment is precisely calibrated to bring you maximum happiness, fulfillment, and satisfaction. A life where you'll experience the deepest love, the most profound achievements, the richest friendships, and the most breathtaking adventures. Every day will be exactly what you need it to be, when you need it to be that way. There's just one small detail. To receive this perfect life, you'll need to plug into what they call the experience machine. Once connected, you'll live out this flawless existence entirely in your mind while your physical body remains safely suspended in a tank, nourished and maintained by advanced technology. You'll have no awareness that you're plugged in. To you, every moment will feel completely real. More real than real, because it's been designed specifically for your psychological makeup. The scientists explain that you'll live what feels like decades in this perfect reality. You'll fall in love with your ideal partner, achieve career success beyond your wildest dreams, travel to places that take your breath away, experience profound spiritual insights, create beautiful art, help countless people, and feel the deep satisfaction that comes from a life well lived. Every relationship will be perfectly harmonious. Every challenge will be one you can overcome with grace. Every sunset will move you to tears of joy. And here's the thing that makes this offer so seductive. You won't be pretending to be happy. You won't be deluding yourself. You will genuinely, authentically experience all of these positive emotions. Your joy will be real joy. Your love will be real love. Your sense of accomplishment will be real accomplishment. The only thing that won't be real is the external world generating these experiences. Now, before you answer too quickly, the scientists give you time to think. They're in no hurry. This is, after all, potentially the most important decision you'll ever make. They hand you a comfortable chair, pour you a cup of tea, and tell you to take all the time you need. Because once you plug in, there's no going back. The process is irreversible. As you sit there contemplating this offer, questions begin to swirl through your mind like autumn leaves caught in a gentle breeze. Questions that seem simple on the surface but grow more complex the longer you examine them. What makes a life meaningful? Is happiness the ultimate goal of human existence? Or is there something else we're searching for? Does it matter if our experiences are real, as long as they feel real to us? This thought experiment, first proposed by philosopher Robert Nozick in the 1970s, has been troubling and fascinating thinkers ever since, because it forces us to confront something uncomfortable about our own values and desires, something we might prefer not to examine too closely. Most people, when first presented with this scenario, instinctively recoil from the idea of plugging in. There's something about the prospect that feels wrong, even repulsive, despite the promise of perfect happiness. But why? If happiness is what we're truly after in life, if pleasure and satisfaction are our ultimate goals, then surely the experience machine represents the ideal solution. It's a happiness guarantee, a foolproof method for achieving the very thing we spend our entire lives pursuing. Yet something deep within us rebels against this notion. Something whispers that there must be more to life than just feeling good, even if we can't quite articulate what that something is. We sense that there's a difference between a genuinely meaningful existence and one that merely provides us with positive sensations, no matter how authentic those sensations might feel. But let's not dismiss the experience machine too quickly. Let's give this option the serious consideration it deserves. After all, think about how much suffering exists in your current life. The anxiety that keeps you awake at night, the relationships that disappoint you, the goals you never quite reach, the physical pain, the emotional wounds that never fully heal, the constant worry about money, health, love, purpose. The nagging sense that you're not living up to your potential, that you're somehow falling short of who you could be. In the experience machine, all of that disappears, not just temporarily, but permanently. You'll never again experience heartbreak, failure, disease, loneliness, or despair. You'll never again lie awake at 3 a.m. consumed by worry. You'll never again feel the sting of rejection or the weight of disappointment. Instead, you'll float through existence on a cloud of perpetual fulfillment. Consider too that much of what we think of as real in our current lives might not be as solid as we imagine. How much of your daily experience is already mediated by technology, by screens, by virtual interactions? How many of your beliefs about the world are based on second-hand information rather than direct experience? How often do you find yourself living in your head, lost in fantasies and memories, rather than fully present in the physical world? Perhaps the distinction between real and simulated experience isn't as clear-cut as we'd like to believe. Perhaps what matters isn't the source of our experiences, but their quality, their richness, their ability to make us feel alive and engaged. From this perspective, the experience machine begins to look less like a prison and more like a liberation. And yet, there's still that nagging voice of doubt, that sense that something crucial would be lost in translation. But what exactly? What is it about unplugged reality that might be worth preserving, even at the cost of guaranteed happiness? One possibility is that we value not just having good experiences, but doing things, accomplishing something real in the world. We want to actually help people, not just feel like we're helping people. We want to actually create something beautiful, not just experience the sensation of having created something beautiful. There's a difference between being a great writer and merely feeling like a great writer, between actually being loved and simply experiencing the feeling of being loved. This suggests that we care about more than just the contents of our consciousness. We care about our connection to reality, about the actual impact we have on the world around us. We want our lives to matter not just to us, but in some objective sense. We want to be participants in reality, not just observers of a perfectly crafted illusion. But then again, if you're plugged into the experience machine, you won't be aware that your accomplishments aren't real. The version of you living in that simulated reality will believe completely that you're helping real people, creating real art, making a real difference. That version of you will feel the satisfaction of genuine achievement because, from their perspective, the achievement is genuine. So we find ourselves caught in a philosophical puzzle. If happiness and fulfillment are what matter most, then the experience machine delivers them perfectly. If being connected to reality is what matters most, then the experience machine is a trap. But how do we decide which matters more, and how do we even define what reality means in the first place? This question becomes even more complex when we consider that our current existence might already be more illusory than we realize. Modern neuroscience tells us that our perception of reality is largely constructed by our brains. The colors we see, the sounds we hear, the emotions we feel, all of these are interpretations created by neural networks, not direct reflections of some external truth. In a very real sense, we're already living inside a kind of experience machine, the biological experience machine of our own consciousness. If that's the case, then perhaps the artificial experience machine is simply a more sophisticated version of what we already have, an upgrade to our existing simulation rather than a departure from reality. From this perspective, the choice isn't between real and fake experiences, but between naturally occurring and artificially enhanced experiences. The more we examine this thought experiment, the more it reveals about our deepest assumptions and values. It forces us to ask not just what we want from life, but why we want it. Not just what makes us happy, but what makes happiness meaningful. Not just how we want to feel, but who we want to be. And perhaps that's the key insight hiding within this scenario. Perhaps the experience machine troubles us not because it fails to deliver happiness, but because it threatens our sense of identity, our understanding of what it means to be human. In choosing to remain unplugged, we might be choosing not just reality over illusion, but growth over stagnation, challenge over comfort, authentic selfhood over engineered bliss. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Before we can properly evaluate this choice, we need to dig deeper into what the experience machine really represents and why it continues to fascinate philosophers, psychologists, and anyone who's ever wondered about the nature of a life worth living. Let's slow down for a moment and really examine what's happening when we contemplate this choice. There's something almost hypnotic about the way this thought experiment works on our minds, the way it gently pulls apart our assumptions about what we value most. Picture yourself back in that room with the scientists, the offer still hanging in the air like morning mist. You take another sip of tea and find yourself wondering about the people in your life right now, your family, your friends, your colleagues, even the strangers you pass on the street each day. In the experience machine, you would interact with simulated versions of people, or perhaps entirely artificial beings designed to provide you with perfect social experiences. But here's where it gets interesting. These simulated people would be indistinguishable from real people to you. They would have personalities, quirks, histories. They would surprise you, challenge you, make you laugh, inspire you to be better. They would feel completely real because your brain would process them as completely real. The conversations you'd have, the bonds you'd form, the love you'd share, all of it would feel as authentic as anything you've ever experienced. Yet knowing this, does something still feel hollow about the prospect? Is there something irreplaceable about knowing that the person sitting across from you at dinner has their own independent existence, their own struggles and dreams that exist whether you're thinking about them or not? Or is this just a kind of philosophical snobbery, an arbitrary preference for one type of experience over another equally valid type? Consider how this connects to the way we already live our lives. How much of your daily happiness depends on things that are, in some sense, constructions or interpretations? The meaning you find in your work, the significance you attach to your relationships, the value you place on your achievements, all of these are partially created by your mind's tendency to weave narratives and assign importance to events. When you feel proud of an accomplishment, that pride exists in your consciousness regardless of how others might judge that same accomplishment. When you feel love for someone, that love is real to you whether or not it's reciprocated or even noticed. In many ways, the most important aspects of your experience are already happening primarily in the realm of your mind. This realization might make the experience machine seem less foreign, less like a departure from authentic living, and more like an intensification of how consciousness already works. But it might also make it seem more troubling, as if accepting the machine would mean acknowledging that nothing we care about is as solid as we'd like to believe. The scientists still waiting patiently for your decision mention that they've offered this choice to many people over the years. They tell you that responses vary dramatically. Some people accept immediately, drawn by the promise of an end to suffering and the guarantee of fulfillment. Others reject it just as quickly, driven by an intuitive sense that something essential would be lost. But the most interesting group, they say, are those who find themselves genuinely torn. These individuals often spend hours, sometimes days, wrestling with the decision. They create elaborate lists of pros and cons. They imagine detailed scenarios of what their plugged-in life might look like. They question every assumption they've ever held about happiness and meaning. What's fascinating is that this internal struggle often becomes a kind of philosophical awakening. In trying to decide whether to plug in, people discover things about their own values they never knew existed. They uncover beliefs about reality, relationships, and purpose that had been operating beneath the surface of consciousness, shaping their choices without their awareness. Some realize they've been living their entire lives in pursuit of something they can't quite name, something beyond happiness, or pleasure, or even contentment. Others discover that their resistance to the machine stems not from any deep philosophical conviction, but from fear, pride, or simple habit. The thought experiment becomes a mirror, reflecting back not just our conscious preferences, but our hidden motivations and unconscious assumptions. One woman, the scientists tell you, spent 3 days considering the offer. She filled notebook after notebook with her thoughts, creating elaborate diagrams of what she valued and why. In the end, she chose to plug in, but not before the process of decision-making had fundamentally changed her understanding of herself and what she wanted from life. Another person, a man in his 50s, rejected the offer within minutes but then spent months afterward questioning that quick decision. He found himself examining every aspect of his daily routine, wondering which parts of his life were truly meaningful and which were simply comfortable habits. The thought experiment, even though he never acted on it, transformed the way he approached his relationships, his work, his entire existence. This suggests something profound about the value of the experience machine thought experiment itself. even if we never face this choice in reality, even if such technology never exists, the mere act of considering it can illuminate aspects of human nature that remain hidden during ordinary reflection. It forces us to separate our stated values from our revealed preferences, to examine whether we truly want what we think we want. It asks us to consider whether the things we spend our time pursuing, the goals we set for ourselves, the relationships we prioritize, are actually aligned with what matters most to us at the deepest level. But let's probe even deeper into the mechanics of this choice. The scientists explain that the experience machine isn't just about providing positive experiences, it's about providing the optimal experiences for your particular psychology. The machine would study your personality, your history, your deepest desires and fears, and then craft experiences that perfectly match your psychological needs. If you're someone who finds meaning through helping others, you'd experience yourself making profound differences in people's lives. If you're driven by creative expression, you'd feel the deep satisfaction of creating masterpieces that move and inspire. If you crave adventure, you'd live through thrilling expeditions and discoveries. The machine wouldn't give you generic happiness. It would give you precisely the kind of happiness that resonates most strongly with who you are. This personalization makes the offer even more seductive and even more troubling. It's not just promising you a good life, it's promising you the perfect version of your life. The life you would choose if you had unlimited power to shape your circumstances. In that perfect life, you'd never waste time on activities that don't fulfill you. You'd never find yourself stuck in situations that drain your energy or diminish your spirit. You'd never experience the frustration of being misunderstood, or the pain of unrequited love, or the disappointment of falling short of your goals. Every moment would be precisely calibrated to bring out the best in you and to provide you with exactly what you need to feel complete. The question then becomes, if such a life were possible, what possible reason could there be for choosing anything else? What could be valuable enough about our current imperfect existence to justify choosing it over guaranteed optimal experience? One answer might be that we value the process of becoming over the state of being, that we find meaning not just in positive experiences but in the journey toward those experiences, including the struggles, setbacks, and uncertainty that make eventual success feel earned rather than given. In the experience machine, you might experience the feeling of having overcome great challenges, but you wouldn't actually overcome them. You might feel the satisfaction of personal growth, but you wouldn't actually grow since you'd begin the simulation as psychologically perfect as you'd ever become. This suggests that what we value isn't just the destination but the authentic process of getting there. We want to actually develop our character, not just experience having good character. We want to actually learn and change and become wiser, not just feel wise. But even this explanation raises questions. If the version of you in the experience machine feels that they've genuinely grown and developed, if they experience real learning and authentic character development, what makes that less valuable than the same processes occurring in what we call reality? Perhaps the issue isn't with artificial versus natural experiences, but with the static nature of the machine's perfection. In choosing to plug in, you'd be choosing a kind of psychological stasis, a state where you'd never need to grow because you'd already be living at your optimal level of functioning. This brings us to another crucial aspect of the thought experiment. The experience machine doesn't just offer us perfect experiences, it offers us an end to the fundamental uncertainty that characterizes human existence. In our current lives, we never know what tomorrow will bring. We can't guarantee that our relationships will last, that our health will hold, that our plans will succeed. This uncertainty is often a source of anxiety and stress. It keeps us awake at night worrying about the future. It makes us hesitant to take risks. It fills us with doubt about our choices. The experience machine would eliminate all of that uncertainty, replacing it with the knowledge that everything will work out perfectly. But perhaps uncertainty isn't just an unfortunate side effect of existence. Perhaps it's one of the things that makes life feel vital and meaningful. Without the possibility of failure, success might feel hollow. Without the risk of loss, love might feel trivial. Without the chance of making wrong choices, the right choices might feel predetermined rather than earned. The scientists, noticing your deep contemplation, mention one final detail about their offer. They explain that time moves differently in the experience machine. What feels like decades of perfect life to you would pass as only minutes in the outside world. You could live multiple lifetimes of optimal experience, exploring every possible version of happiness and fulfillment, before your body aged even slightly. This detail adds yet another layer to the decision. It's not just about choosing between reality and simulation, it's about choosing between one lifetime of uncertain experience and multiple lifetimes of perfect experience. The offer becomes not just attractive but overwhelming in its generosity, and still, something within you might resist. Something that insists there's value in facing life as it actually is, rather than as it could be engineered to be. Something that suggests authenticity matters more than optimization. That truth is more important than happiness, that the real world, with all its flaws and difficulties, offers something irreplaceable that no simulation could ever provide. But what exactly is that something, and how can we be sure it's worth preserving? As you sit there in that quiet room, the weight of this impossible choice settling around you like a soft blanket, you begin to notice something curious happening in your mind. The longer you contemplate the experience machine, the more it seems to reveal not just about this hypothetical choice, but about every choice you've ever made and every value you've ever held dear. You find yourself thinking about moments in your past when you faced smaller versions of this same dilemma. Times when you could have taken the easier path, when you could have chosen comfort over challenge, when you could have settled for something that felt good rather than pursuing something that felt true. Each of these moments, you realize, was a miniature version of the experience machine choice. Remember that job opportunity you turned down because it felt too safe, too predictable? The relationship you walked away from because it was pleasant but lacked depth? The creative project you chose to pursue even though it was difficult and uncertain, rather than the one that would have brought you immediate praise? In each case, you were choosing reality over a kind of experience machine, choosing the messiness of authentic living over the smoothness of engineered satisfaction. But as you reflect on these past choices, you're not entirely sure you made the right decisions. Some of those harder paths led to growth and fulfillment, yes, but others led to pain and regret. Some of those rejected comforts might have actually made your life better, richer, more meaningful. The experience machine of hindsight shows you alternate versions of your life that might have been happier, more successful, more complete. This realization brings a new dimension to the scientist's offer. It's not just about choosing between your current reality and a simulated perfection. It's about choosing between the person you are now, shaped by all your imperfect choices and incomplete understanding, and the person you could become if every decision were optimized for your well-being. In the experience machine, you wouldn't just live perfectly, you'd choose perfectly. Every decision point in your simulated life would unfold in the way that brings you the most fulfillment. You'd always know the right thing to say, the right path to take, the right person to love. You'd be the version of yourself that makes all the choices your current self wishes it had made. The scientists notice your deepening contemplation and offer another perspective. They explain that many people worry about losing their authentic self in the machine, but they suggest the opposite might be true. Your authentic self, they argue, is not the confused, limited, often self-defeating person you are in ordinary reality. Your authentic self is who you would be if you were free from the constraints of circumstance, genetics, and social conditioning that currently shape your choices. In the machine, you'd finally become fully yourself. You'd express your deepest creativity without being held back by lack of skill or resources. You'd love as deeply as your heart is capable without fear of rejection or loss. You'd pursue your highest aspirations without being limited by practical concerns or societal expectations. The machine wouldn't change who you are. It would simply allow you to be who you truly are without interference. This argument has a seductive logic to it. After all, how much of your current personality is really you, and how much is just the accumulation of limitations and compromises forced upon you by circumstances? How many of your beliefs, habits, and preferences are authentic expressions of your inner nature? And how many are just adaptations to a world that doesn't allow you to be fully yourself? If you're naturally generous but have learned to be guarded because you've been taken advantage of, which is the real you? If you're creative but have suppressed that creativity because it wasn't practical or profitable, which version represents your authentic self? The experience machine would strip away all those protective layers and defensive adaptations, revealing the person you were meant to be. But even as this perspective appeals to something deep within you, another part of your mind rebels against it. There's something about the idea of optimization that feels fundamentally opposed to the human experience. Growth, after all, comes not from perfection, but from imperfection. Learning happens not when everything goes smoothly, but when we encounter obstacles and have to figure out how to overcome them. The struggles you've faced in your life, the mistakes you've made, the pain you've endured, these weren't just unfortunate side effects of an imperfect world. They were the raw material from which your character was forged. They taught you empathy, resilience, wisdom, and strength in ways that no amount of simulated challenge could replicate. In the experience machine, you might feel like you've learned these lessons, but you wouldn't actually have learned them. You'd have the memories and emotions associated with growth without having done the actual work of growing. You'd be like an actor who has memorized all the lines of wisdom without having lived through the experiences that give those words their meaning. The scientists sensing your internal struggle share one more detail that stops you cold. They mention that the technology that makes the experience machine possible has revealed something unexpected about human consciousness. Their research has shown that the line between experience and reality is far blurrier than anyone previously imagined. They've discovered that consciousness itself is essentially a kind of experience machine, a biological system that constructs our sense of reality from fragments of sensory data, memory, and imagination. The external world exists certainly, but what you experience as reality is actually your brain's interpretation of that world, filtered through your particular nervous system and shaped by your individual psychology. In other words, you're already living in an experience machine. The question isn't whether to plug into an artificial reality, but whether to upgrade to a better version of the reality construction system you already possess. The machine wouldn't be giving you fake experiences, it would be giving you real experiences generated by a more sophisticated consciousness creation technology than your biological brain. This revelation reframes everything. If your current experience of reality is already a kind of simulation run by your brain, then the experience machine isn't a departure from authenticity, it's an enhancement of the authenticity creation process. It's not fake reality, it's better reality, reality optimized for your particular consciousness, rather than constrained by the accidents of biology and circumstance. But somehow this scientific explanation doesn't quiet the unease you feel about the choice. If anything, it makes the decision more troubling. Because if consciousness is already a kind of simulation, if your experience of reality is already constructed rather than directly perceived, then what exactly are you trying to preserve by staying unplugged? You realize that your resistance to the experience machine might not be based on any rational argument about reality versus simulation. It might be something more primal, more fundamental to human nature. Perhaps what you're protecting isn't reality itself, but your right to face reality on your own terms, to encounter the world as it is rather than as it's been optimized to be. There's something irreducibly human about the desire to meet existence directly, without mediation, without optimization, without the promise that everything will work out perfectly. We want to wrestle with the angel, even if it means walking away limping. We want to face the storm, even if we might not survive it unchanged. This brings you to what might be the heart of the matter. The experience machine offers you everything you think you want, but it requires you to give up something you might not have known you valued. The right to fail, to struggle, to encounter something larger and more mysterious than yourself. In your current life, you exist in relationship not just with other people, but with reality itself. You're in conversation with a world that doesn't always give you what you want, that surprises you, challenges you, sometimes overwhelms you. This relationship, difficult as it often is, might be one of the most essential aspects of human existence. The experience machine would end that relationship, not by removing reality, but by making it perfectly responsive to your needs. You'd no longer be in conversation with something other than yourself. You'd be in conversation only with a perfectly crafted mirror of your own desires and preferences. And perhaps that's what feels so unsettling about the choice. Not that the machine would give you fake experiences, but that it would give you only yourself, reflected back in perfect form. You'd lose the otherness of existence, the sense that you're part of something larger and more complex than your individual consciousness. In the real world, you can be surprised. You can encounter something genuinely new, something that changes you in ways you couldn't have predicted or planned. You can bump up against the edges of your understanding and be forced to grow beyond your current limitations. You can discover that your assumptions were wrong, that your preferences were based on incomplete information, that there were forms of meaning and beauty you never knew existed. The experience machine, perfect as it is, can only give you variations on what you already know you want. It can't give you what you don't yet know you want. It can't surprise you with forms of fulfillment that lie beyond your current imagination. It can optimize your life, but it can't transform it in ways that transcend optimization itself. As you sit there contemplating this choice, you begin to understand that the decision isn't really about happiness versus meaning, or reality versus simulation, or even authenticity versus artificiality. It's about whether you want to remain open to transformation, or whether you want to settle into a perfectly crafted version of who you currently are. The experience machine offers you the ultimate expression of your present self, but it can't offer you the possibility of becoming someone you haven't yet imagined you could be. It can't offer you the chance to be fundamentally surprised by existence, to be changed in ways that go beyond your current understanding of what change could look like. This realization brings a strange kind of clarity. You begin to see that the value of staying unplugged might not lie in any particular aspect of reality that the machine couldn't replicate. It might lie in preserving the fundamental openness of human existence, the possibility that life might teach you something you don't yet know you need to learn. In your current life, you're always in the process of becoming. You're never finished, never complete, never fully optimized. There's always more to discover, more to understand, more ways to grow. The experience machine would freeze that process, giving you the perfect expression of who you are right now, but closing off the possibility of becoming who you might be tomorrow. And perhaps that's what human life is really about. Not achieving perfect happiness or optimal experience, but remaining open to the endless possibility of transformation. Not becoming who you want to be, but discovering who you could become through the unpredictable encounter with existence itself. The scientists wait patiently as these thoughts cascade through your mind. They've seen this process before, they explain gently. The deep contemplation, the wrestling with fundamental questions about human nature and meaning. They know that for some people, the very act of considering the choice becomes more valuable than either possible outcome, because in thinking deeply about whether to plug in, you're forced to examine what you truly value, what you really believe about the purpose of existence, what makes life worth living. You're compelled to look beneath the surface of your daily concerns and connect with something essential about what it means to be human. Whether you choose the machine or choose reality, that examination will change you. The question itself becomes a kind of philosophical awakening, a moment when the usually automatic process of living becomes conscious and deliberate. You're no longer just living your life, you're choosing your life with full awareness of what that choice means. As the afternoon light begins to fade outside the window, casting long shadows across the room where you sit with this impossible decision, you realize that the experience machine has already given you something valuable. Not the perfect life it promises, but the perfect question. The question that illuminates everything about what it means to exist as a conscious being in an uncertain world. And in that illumination perhaps lies the beginning of your answer. The shadows lengthen across the room as you find yourself drawn deeper into contemplation, and the scientists seem to understand that this decision cannot be rushed. They've settled into their chairs with the patience of people who have witnessed this internal struggle many times before. One of them mentions, almost as an afterthought, that they've noticed something curious about the people who've faced this choice over the years. Those who spend the longest time considering the offer, she explains, often report that the decision-making process itself becomes transformative, not because they necessarily choose correctly, but because the act of wrestling with such fundamental questions forces them to examine assumptions they've carried their entire lives without questioning. She tells you about a philosopher who spent weeks considering the machine, filling journals with arguments for and against plugging in. He ultimately chose to remain in reality, but later said that the weeks of contemplation had taught him more about himself and what he valued than decades of ordinary reflection. The thought experiment had become a kind of mirror, showing him aspects of his character and desires that had remained hidden in the routine flow of daily existence. Another person, a woman who had always considered herself primarily motivated by the desire to help others, discovered through contemplating the machine that her altruism was more complex than she'd realized. Part of her motivation came from genuinely caring about other people's welfare, but another part came from the way helping others made her feel about herself. The machine could provide both the feeling of helping and the feeling of being the kind of person who helps, but somehow that seemed to diminish the value of both experiences. This realization didn't make her less generous or compassionate. But it did make her more honest about the mixed nature of human motivation. She began to understand that even her most noble impulses contained elements of self-interest, and paradoxically, this understanding made her more genuinely compassionate, not less. As you listen to these stories, you notice something shifting in your own thinking. The question is no longer simply whether to plug in or stay unplugged. It's becoming a lens through which to examine the entire structure of human values and desires. Each aspect of life you consider seems to reveal new layers of complexity. Take creativity, for instance. In the experience machine, you could experience being the greatest artist who ever lived. You could feel the deep satisfaction of creating works that move people to tears, that change the way they see the world, that endure for centuries. The machine could give you the experience of artistic genius without requiring you to develop the skill, without demanding the years of practice and failure that usually precede genuine mastery. But would that simulated creativity satisfy the same deep need that drives people to spend their lives pursuing artistic expression? Is the value of creativity found in the final product, or in the process of creation itself? Is it about producing beauty, or about the transformation that happens within the creator during the act of creating? In reality, the path to artistic mastery is often frustrating, filled with failed attempts, creative blocks, and the humbling recognition of the gap between your vision and your ability to execute it. Yet many artists describe these struggles as essential to their development, not just as craftspeople, but as human beings. The difficulties aren't obstacles to overcome on the way to the real reward, they are part of the reward itself. The experience machine could give you the memory of having struggled, the emotional satisfaction of having overcome challenges, but it couldn't give you the actual growth that comes from genuine struggle. You'd have the feeling of having been transformed by your art, without having been actually transformed by it. This pattern seems to repeat across every domain of human experience you examine. Love, friendship, achievement, learning, even simple pleasure, all seem to derive part of their value from elements that the machine could simulate but not truly provide. The unpredictability, the risk of failure, the possibility of surprise, the encounter with genuine otherness. The scientists notice your deepening contemplation and offer another perspective that stops you in your tracks. They mention that some of their colleagues have argued that the choice between the machine and reality is actually a false dilemma. Perhaps the question isn't which option is better, but why human beings seem so instinctively resistant to the obviously superior choice. From a purely utilitarian perspective, they explain, the machine is clearly preferable. It provides more happiness, more fulfillment, more of everything that people say they want from life. The fact that most people reject it despite its obvious advantages suggests something interesting about human psychology. We might not actually want what we think we want. This possibility is both liberating and terrifying. Liberating because it suggests that our current struggles and dissatisfactions might not represent failures to achieve what we really desire, but misunderstandings about what desire itself means. Terrifying because it implies that we might be fundamentally confused about our own nature and needs. Perhaps what we call the desire for happiness is actually something more complex. Perhaps it's a desire for the kind of engagement with existence that can produce happiness, but only as a byproduct, not as a direct goal. Perhaps we want to feel earned rather than given, chosen rather than predetermined, real rather than optimized. This would explain why lottery winners often report that their windfall doesn't make them as happy as they expected, why people who achieve their dreams sometimes feel empty afterward, why the anticipation of pleasure is often more satisfying than the pleasure itself. We might be creatures designed not for happiness, but for the pursuit of happiness, not for satisfaction, but for the meaningful engagement that can sometimes lead to satisfaction. If this is true, then the experience machine's promise to deliver perfect fulfillment might be missing the point entirely. It would be like offering a professional athlete the opportunity to always win without ever having to train or compete. The victory might feel hollow not because it isn't real victory, but because victory without struggle isn't actually what the athlete wants, even if they think it is. But this raises yet another troubling question. If we don't actually want what we think we want, how can we trust our instinctive rejection of the machine? Maybe our resistance to perfect happiness is just another confusion, another misunderstanding of our own nature. Maybe we're like people refusing medical treatment because we've grown attached to our illness, unable to imagine what health would feel like. The scientists tell you about research showing that people are remarkably poor at predicting what will make them happy. We overestimate how much pleasure we'll get from positive events, and how much pain we'll suffer from negative ones. We adapt to both good and bad circumstances much more quickly than we expect. Given this track record, why should we trust our intuitions about what kind of life would be most fulfilling? Perhaps the machine represents not a departure from authentic living, but a correction to the systematic errors in human judgment that keep us from recognizing what would truly make us flourish. Perhaps our resistance to it is like a bias that needs to be overcome, not an instinct that should be trusted. Yet even as you consider this possibility, something within you continues to resist. Not because you can articulate exactly what would be lost in the machine, but because the very idea of optimization feels somehow opposed to the essence of human experience. There's something irreducibly mysterious about consciousness, something that seems to require the possibility of genuine surprise, genuine risk, genuine encounter with the unknown. You think about moments in your own life when you felt most alive, most fully yourself. Were they moments of pure happiness? Often, they were moments of intensity that transcended simple pleasure or pain. Moments when you felt connected to something larger than yourself. When you experienced the strange joy that can come from facing difficulty with courage. When you discovered capabilities you didn't know you possessed. These experiences seem to require something that the machine, perfect as it is, cannot provide. They require the possibility that things might go badly, that you might fail, that you might discover something about yourself or the world that fundamentally changes your understanding of both. They require what you might call existential risk, the chance that engagement with reality might transform you in ways you cannot predict or control. The machine offers you the experience of transformation without the risk of actual transformation. It can make you feel like you've grown, learned, changed, become wiser and stronger and more compassionate. But it cannot actually change you, because the you that enters the machine is the you that would live forever in its perfect simulation. In reality, you're always becoming someone new. Every experience, every choice, every encounter with the world shapes you in subtle ways. You're never the same person you were yesterday, even if the changes are too small to notice. You're always in the process of becoming, always unfinished, always capable of being surprised by who you might turn out to be. This ongoing transformation might be what you're really trying to preserve when you resist the machine. Not any particular aspect of reality, but the fundamental openness of human existence, the possibility that life might teach you something about yourself or the nature of being that you cannot currently imagine. As evening approaches and the room grows dim, you find yourself thinking about the people in your life who have shaped you most profoundly. Often, they were people who challenged you, who saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself, who refused to let you settle for less than you were capable of becoming. They loved you, not just for who you were, but for who you could become. In the machine, you would be surrounded by people who accept you perfectly, who never push you beyond your comfort zone, who never demand growth or change because you would already be optimized for happiness. You would be loved completely, but perhaps not in the way that transforms love from mere acceptance into a force for becoming more than you thought possible. Real love, you realize, often involves a kind of beautiful frustration. The people who love you most deeply are often the ones who see your potential most clearly, who won't let you hide from the possibility of growth, who continue to believe in your capacity for transformation, even when you've given up on it yourself. They love you as you are, but they also love you as you could be, and that dual vision creates a creative tension that pulls you toward your better self. The machine could simulate this experience, could make you feel challenged and supported and pushed to grow, but it couldn't provide the genuine otherness of another consciousness that sees you from the outside and calls you to account for your choices. It couldn't provide the real encounter with someone else's vision of who you might become. Perhaps this is what community really means, not just the experience of belonging, but the experience of being seen by others who care enough about you to hold you accountable to your highest possibilities. The machine could give you perfect community, but it couldn't give you the genuine encounter with otherness that makes community transformative rather than merely comfortable. The scientists notice that darkness has begun to fall outside, and they gently mention that they don't need an answer tonight. The offer will remain open, they explain. You can take days, weeks, even months to consider the choice. Some people, they've found, benefit from living with the question for a while, letting it work on them gradually rather than trying to resolve it immediately. They suggest that you might want to experiment with smaller versions of this choice in your daily life. Notice when you're faced with the option between comfort and growth, between the known and the unknown, between what feels good and what feels true. Pay attention to how you make these choices and what they reveal about your deepest values, because in many ways, they explain, you're making versions of this choice constantly. Every time you choose to engage with something difficult rather than avoiding it, every time you risk vulnerability in a relationship, every time you pursue a goal that matters to you, despite the possibility of failure, you're choosing reality over a kind of experience machine. And every time you choose the easy path, the comfortable option, the safe choice, you're choosing a small version of the machine. Not because these choices are wrong, but because they prioritize feeling good over the messier business of becoming who you're capable of being. This realization brings a new dimension to your contemplation. The choice isn't just about this hypothetical machine. It's about how you want to live right now, today, with the decisions that are actually available to you. The thought experiment becomes a lens for examining every aspect of your current existence. Are you living in a way that preserves your openness to transformation? Or are you already plugged into a smaller version of the machine, surrounding yourself with experiences and people and activities that feel good but don't challenge you to grow? Are you engaging with reality as it is? Or are you curating a version of reality that confirms your existing beliefs and preferences? These questions don't have simple answers, and perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the value of the experience machine thought experiment isn't to provide clear guidance about what to choose, but to make you more conscious of the choices you're already making, more aware of what's at stake in each decision to engage or withdraw, to risk or retreat, to remain open or close yourself off to the possibility of change. As you sit in the gathering darkness, contemplating this impossible choice, you begin to understand that the scientists have given you something even more valuable than the option to plug into their machine. They've given you a way of seeing your ordinary life as a series of choices between different kinds of reality, different ways of being human, different approaches to the fundamental question of how to live. The machine may be hypothetical, but the choice it represents is utterly real. Every day, in small ways and large, you decide whether to engage with the world as it is or retreat into the comfort of the world as you wish it were. Every day you choose between the messy uncertainty of growth and the clean predictability of stagnation. And perhaps that's enough. Perhaps you don't need to decide whether to plug into the experience machine. Perhaps you just need to remain conscious of the fact that you're always choosing, always deciding what kind of reality you want to inhabit, always selecting between different ways of being alive in the world. The scientists gather their papers and prepare to leave, but they assure you the offer remains open. Take your time, they say. Let the question work on you. Let it show you things about yourself and your values that you might not have noticed before. Whether you ultimately choose the machine or choose reality matters less than the consciousness you bring to whatever choice you make. As they reach the door, one of them turns back with a final thought. The real gift of this choice, she says, isn't either option they're offering. It's the opportunity to become fully aware of what you're choosing every moment of every day and why. The machine may be perfect, but consciousness itself, the ability to examine your own existence and make deliberate choices about how to live, might be something even more valuable than perfection. The door closes softly behind them, leaving you alone with your thoughts in the quiet room. Outside, the world continues its imperfect course, full of uncertainty and struggle, and the endless possibility of surprise. Inside, you sit with a question that has no easy answer, a choice that illuminates everything about what it means to be human. And in that illumination, perhaps you're already beginning to find your way toward whatever decision feels most true to who you are and who you hope to become. The machine waits, patient and perfect. Reality waits, messy and uncertain. And you wait, conscious and choosing, in the space between them where all human life unfolds. The silence in the room feels different now, heavier somehow, pregnant with possibility. You find yourself noticing things you hadn't before, the way the last traces of daylight catch the dust motes floating in the air, the distant sound of traffic that somehow seems both comforting and melancholy, the weight of your own breathing as it rises and falls in rhythm with thoughts too large for any single mind to hold completely. There's something almost dreamlike about sitting here with this choice, as if you've crossed some invisible threshold into a realm where ordinary rules no longer apply. The familiar world outside the window continues its predictable dance. People walking home from work, lights beginning to flicker on in apartment windows, the eternal human comedy of daily existence playing out just as it has for countless generations. Yet here you sit, contemplating a possibility that could render all of that familiar striving and suffering and simple, human persistence entirely optional. You begin to wonder about the other people who have faced this choice. Did they sit in this same chair, feeling this same weight of infinite possibility? Did they experience the same strange mixture of excitement and dread? The same sense that they were standing at the edge of everything they'd ever known about what it means to be alive? The scientists mentioned that responses varied dramatically, but you find yourself curious about the deeper patterns. What kinds of people chose the machine? What kinds chose reality? More importantly, what did their choices reveal about the hidden architecture of human values, the unconscious beliefs that guide our most fundamental decisions about how we want to exist in the world? Perhaps those who chose the machine were people who had experienced enough suffering to know its weight, who had faced enough disappointment to appreciate the promise of guaranteed fulfillment. Maybe they were individuals who had spent their lives fighting against circumstances that seemed designed to thwart their deepest aspirations, who had earned the right to choose ease over struggle, optimization over uncertainty. Or perhaps they were people who had simply thought more clearly about what really matters, who had cut through the romantic notions about struggle and growth to recognize that consciousness exists to experience, and that better experience is obviously preferable to worse experience, regardless of how that experience is generated. Those who chose reality might have been driven by different intuitions entirely. Perhaps they were people who had found meaning in their struggles, who had discovered that their deepest satisfactions came not from achieving their goals but from the process of pursuing them. Maybe they were individuals who had learned to find beauty in imperfection, strength in vulnerability, wisdom in uncertainty. Or maybe they were simply people who couldn't shake the feeling that there was something irreplaceable about engaging with existence on its own terms, something valuable about facing the world without the safety net of guaranteed outcomes. Perhaps they were people who had learned to love the questions themselves, not just the answers. As you contemplate these different ways of approaching the choice, you realize that the decision isn't just about what kind of life you want to live. It's about what kind of being you understand yourself to be. Are you primarily a creature that seeks happiness, fulfillment, the satisfaction of desires? Or are you something more complex, something that finds its deepest meaning not in satisfaction, but in the ongoing encounter with mystery? This question touches something fundamental about human nature itself. Throughout history, people have offered different answers to the question of what we are and what we're for. Some traditions see humans as essentially pleasure-seeking beings, whose highest goal is the maximization of positive experience and the minimization of suffering. From this perspective, the experience machine represents the ultimate achievement, the perfect solution to the problem of human existence. Other traditions suggest that humans are meaning-making creatures, beings whose deepest need is not for happiness, but for significance, purpose, the sense that their lives matter in some objective way. For these traditions, the machine might provide the feeling of meaning without providing meaning itself, leaving something essential unfulfilled. Still, other ways of thinking about human nature emphasize our capacity for relationship, for genuine encounter with what is truly other than ourselves. These perspectives might see the machine as a kind of sophisticated solipsism, a way of engaging only with perfect reflections of our own desires, rather than with the genuine otherness that makes relationship possible. And then there are traditions that see humans as fundamentally unfinished beings, creatures whose essence lies not in what they are, but in what they are becoming. For these ways of thinking, the machine's promise of optimization might represent a kind of death, the end of the ongoing process of becoming that defines human existence. You find yourself drawn to this last perspective, though you can't quite articulate why. There's something about the idea of being forever unfinished, forever in process, forever capable of surprise that feels more true to your experience of being alive than any notion of achieved perfection or optimal functioning. In your current life, you're never quite the person you were yesterday. Every experience leaves its mark. Every choice shapes your character in subtle ways. Every encounter with the world teaches you something new about yourself and what it means to exist. This ongoing transformation isn't always comfortable, isn't always pleasant, but it feels essential to what you are. The machine would preserve you at a particular moment of development, giving you the perfect expression of who you are right now, but closing off the possibility of becoming someone fundamentally different. It would be like being crystallized at your current level of understanding, experiencing infinite variations on your present themes, but never discovering entirely new music. This realization brings with it a curious sense of relief, as if you've been trying to solve a puzzle and have suddenly seen how the pieces fit together. The value of staying unplugged might not lie in any particular aspect of reality that the machine couldn't replicate. It might lie in preserving the fundamental mystery of your own becoming, the possibility that tomorrow you might discover something about yourself that changes everything you thought you knew. But even as this insight brings clarity, it also brings new questions. Is the desire for ongoing transformation itself just another preference that could be optimized? Could the machine provide you with the experience of genuine growth and change, the feeling of becoming someone new while maintaining the psychological continuity that makes you you? Perhaps the machine could simulate not just perfect experiences but perfect development, giving you the sense of evolving and growing and discovering new aspects of yourself throughout your simulated lifetime. You could experience the joy of breakthrough moments, the satisfaction of overcoming limitations, the wonder of seeing the world through new eyes, all while remaining safely within the bounds of optimized experience. This possibility makes the choice even more complex. If the machine could provide not just happiness, but the experience of meaningful growth, not just pleasure, but the satisfaction of authentic development, then what exactly would be lost by choosing it? What could reality offer that a perfectly sophisticated simulation could not? The answer, you begin to suspect, might lie not in what reality provides, but in what it refuses to provide. Reality doesn't guarantee that your growth will be meaningful or your struggles productive. It doesn't promise that your development will lead anywhere in particular, or that your becoming will result in someone worthy of having become. It offers you the possibility of transformation without any assurance that the transformation will be positive. The machine, no matter how sophisticated, would have to operate according to some definition of what constitutes good growth, meaningful development, positive change. It would optimize your becoming according to criteria that, however well chosen, would necessarily limit the range of what you could become. It could make you into the best possible version of yourself as currently conceived, but it couldn't allow you to become something that transcends current conceptions of what human flourishing looks like. Reality, by contrast, operates according to no such constraints. It allows for the possibility that you might become something unprecedented, something that doesn't fit existing categories of human excellence or fulfillment. It preserves the radical openness of existence, the chance that consciousness itself might evolve in directions that no current understanding of optimization could anticipate. This is both terrifying and exhilarating. Terrifying because it means there are no guarantees, no safety nets, no assurance that your life will unfold in ways that any reasonable person would consider successful or meaningful. Exhilarating because it means you exist at the edge of infinite possibility, participating in a cosmic experiment whose outcome remains genuinely unknown. You think about the moments in human history when individuals have broken through existing limitations to discover new ways of being human. The artists who created forms of beauty that no one had imagined possible, the thinkers who found new ways of understanding reality, the spiritual seekers who explored dimensions of consciousness that expanded everyone's sense of what human experience could encompass. These breakthroughs required more than optimization. They required the willingness to venture into unknown territory, to risk everything familiar for the possibility of discovering something unprecedented. They required what you might call existential courage, the willingness to engage with mystery without knowing where that engagement might lead. The experience machine, perfect as it is, could only work within the boundaries of current understanding about what makes life worth living. It could provide you with the best possible version of happiness, meaning, growth, and relationship as currently conceived, but it couldn't provide you with entirely new categories of value that haven't yet been imagined. By choosing reality, you would be choosing to participate in the ongoing evolution of human possibility itself. You would be preserving not just your own openness to transformation, but the openness of consciousness itself to discover new ways of being, new forms of meaning, new dimensions of what it might mean to exist as an aware being in a mysterious universe. This realization brings with it a profound sense of responsibility. The choice isn't just about your individual fulfillment or happiness. It's about what kind of contribution you want to make to the larger story of consciousness exploring its own possibilities. Do you want to be a participant in that exploration, with all the risks and uncertainties that entails? Or do you want to be a recipient of the best that exploration has achieved so far? There's no right answer to this question, no moral imperative that points clearly in one direction or another. Both choices represent valid ways of engaging with the mystery of existence. Both have their own dignity, their own integrity, their own legitimate claim to being authentic responses to the human condition. But as you sit there in the gathering darkness, feeling the weight of this impossible decision, you begin to sense which choice feels more aligned with something deep within you. Not because you can prove it's better, not because you can articulate exactly why it matters, but because it resonates with some fundamental frequency of your being. The choice, you realize, isn't really about happiness versus meaning, or reality versus simulation, or even growth versus stagnation. It's about whether you want to remain a question or become an answer. The machine offers you the perfect answer to the question of how to live well. Reality offers you the chance to remain an open question, forever discovering new aspects of what that question might mean. As the last light fades from the windows and the room settles into comfortable darkness, you find yourself thinking about sleep, about dreams, about the strange way consciousness continues its explorations, even when we're not consciously directing them. In sleep, your mind ventures into territories that waking thought can't access, discovers connections and possibilities that logic alone could never reach. Perhaps that's what reality offers that no machine could replicate. The possibility of being surprised by your own depths, of discovering capacities and insights and ways of being that lie beyond the reach of any optimization process. The machine could give you perfect dreams, but it couldn't give you the mystery of dreaming itself, the strange creativity that emerges when consciousness is allowed to wander freely through unknown territories of possibility. And perhaps that mystery, that ongoing capacity for surprise, that fundamental unknowability of what you might become, is more precious than any guarantee of happiness or fulfillment. Perhaps the greatest gift of consciousness isn't the experiences it can have, but the experiences it can't predict, the possibilities it can't optimize, the futures it can't control. The scientist's offer remains open, patient, and perfect, waiting for your decision. But as you sit in the quiet darkness, contemplating the choice between guaranteed fulfillment and unlimited possibility, you begin to understand that whatever you choose, the act of choosing consciously, with full awareness of what's at stake, has already transformed you in ways that no machine could replicate. The question has become part of who you are, woven into the fabric of your consciousness in ways that will influence every subsequent choice you make. Whether you plug in or stay unplugged, you will never again live unconsciously, never again take for granted the mysterious gift of being aware, of existing as a conscious being capable of questioning the nature of consciousness itself. And in that questioning, perhaps, lies something more valuable than any answer, something that makes the choice itself less important than the depth of awareness you bring to making it. The experience machine has already given you its greatest gift, the recognition that you are always choosing, always deciding what kind of reality you want to inhabit, always participating in the ongoing creation of what it means to be human. The room has grown completely dark now, save for the soft glow of streetlights filtering through the window, casting gentle shadows that seem to dance with your contemplation. You've been sitting here for what feels like hours, though time seems to have lost its ordinary meaning in the presence of such a profound choice. The silence is no longer empty but full, pregnant with all the possibilities that branch out from this single moment of decision. As you settle deeper into your chair, you find your mind drifting to the nature of time itself, and how strangely it would function within the experience machine. The scientists mentioned that subjective decades could pass while only minutes elapsed in the outside world. This raises questions that feel almost mystical in their implications. What would it mean to live multiple lifetimes of perfect experience while your physical body remains suspended in a single moment? In our ordinary lives, time feels linear, progressive, carrying us forward from past to future in an unbroken stream of becoming. Each moment builds upon the last, creating the narrative thread that we call our life story. But in the machine, time would become something entirely different. It would become pure duration without consequence, pure experience without the weight of irreversible change. This temporal aspect adds another layer to your contemplation. In choosing the machine, you wouldn't just be choosing perfect experience over imperfect reality. You would be choosing a different relationship with time itself, a way of existing that transcends the ordinary constraints of chronology and consequence. There's something deeply appealing about this possibility. How much of your current anxiety stems from the relentless forward motion of time, the knowledge that choices have permanent consequences, that opportunities once missed may never return? The machine would free you from this temporal prison, allowing you to experience the fullness of existence without the shadow of mortality, without the pressure of making every moment count. Yet as you consider this liberation from time's constraints, you notice a subtle resistance arising within you. Perhaps the weight of consequence isn't just a burden to be escaped, but part of what gives life its meaning. Perhaps the knowledge that time is limited, that choices matter because they can't be undone, is what makes each moment precious rather than merely pleasant. You think about the relationships in your life, the way they've been shaped by time's passage, by shared history, by the accumulation of moments both joyful and difficult. These relationships have depth precisely because they exist in time, because they've been tested by change, because they've grown through seasons of closeness and distance, harmony and conflict. In the machine, you could experience perfect relationships, but they would exist outside of time in any meaningful sense. They would be relationships without history, without the patient accumulation of trust and understanding that comes from weathering life's changes together. They would be beautiful, satisfying, fulfilling, but they would lack the particular quality that makes love feel earned rather than given. This realization brings you to consider what might be the deepest question embedded within the experience machine scenario. Is there a meaningful distinction between earned and given experience? Between satisfaction that comes from overcoming genuine obstacles and satisfaction that's simply provided? Between love that's tested by time and circumstance and love that's guaranteed by design? Your intuition suggests there is such a distinction, though you struggle to articulate exactly what it consists of. Perhaps it lies in the difference between active and passive experience, between engaging with existence and simply receiving it. In your current life, you're not just a conscious observer of experiences but a participant in their creation. Your choices matter because they help shape what happens next, not just to you, but to others, not just in the present but in the future. The machine would transform you from a participant into a recipient, from someone who helps create reality into someone who simply experiences it. This shift might be more profound than it initially appears. Perhaps what we call meaning isn't just about having significant experiences, but about playing a role in bringing those experiences into being. You consider the creative projects you've undertaken, the goals you've pursued, the problems you've tried to solve. The satisfaction you've found in these endeavors seems to come not just from the positive feelings they generate, but from the knowledge that you were instrumental in making them happen. You didn't just experience success, you created it through your choices and efforts and persistence. This suggests that human beings might be fundamentally creative creatures, finding their deepest fulfillment not in consuming experience, but in producing it. We want to be authors of our own stories, not just readers of stories written for us by others, even if those others are benevolent machines designed to give us everything we think we want. But this insight raises yet another troubling question. If you're already the author of your own story, why is that story so often unsatisfying? Why do you make choices that lead to pain and disappointment? Why do you fail to create the experiences you most desire? Perhaps the machine represents not a departure from authorship, but a better form of it, one where your creative powers are enhanced, rather than limited by circumstances beyond your control. After all, in your current life, your ability to shape your experience is constrained by countless factors. Your genetics, your upbringing, your social circumstances, your physical capabilities, your financial resources, all of these place limits on what you can create. The machine would remove these constraints, giving you unlimited creative power to craft the exact experiences you most desire. From this perspective, choosing the machine wouldn't mean giving up your role as author of your own story. It would mean accepting an upgrade to your authorial capabilities, trading the struggle against limiting circumstances for the freedom to express your deepest creative vision without interference. Yet something about this framing still doesn't feel quite right. Perhaps the constraints you face in ordinary life aren't just obstacles to overcome, but part of what makes creativity meaningful. Perhaps the artist finds satisfaction not just in expressing their vision, but in finding ways to express it within the limitations of their chosen medium. Perhaps the challenge itself is part of what makes the creative process valuable. This brings you to consider what might be called the paradox of limitation. In many domains of human experience, constraints seem to enhance rather than diminish meaning and satisfaction. The sonnet is beautiful partly because of its rigid formal requirements, not despite them. The game becomes engaging because of its rules, not in spite of them. The relationship deepens because of the work required to maintain it, not because that work is absent. If this paradox applies to life as a whole, then the machine's promise to remove all constraints might inadvertently remove much of what makes existence meaningful. Perfect freedom might be perfectly meaningless, like a game where you can't lose or a story where nothing is at stake. But perhaps you're romanticizing limitation, making a virtue of necessity. Perhaps the constraints you face aren't meaningful challenges, but arbitrary obstacles that prevent you from flourishing as fully as you could. Maybe your attachment to struggle is like Stockholm Syndrome, a psychological adaptation to circumstances you don't have to accept. The machine offers you the opportunity to discover what your consciousness is truly capable of when freed from the accidents of biology and circumstance. You could explore forms of creativity, relationship, and understanding that are currently impossible given your limitations. You could become the fullest expression of your potential, rather than the compromised version shaped by forces beyond your control. As you wrestle with these competing perspectives, you notice that the choice is forcing you to examine assumptions you didn't even know you held. Assumptions about what makes life meaningful, about the relationship between effort and value, about the nature of authentic experience. The machine isn't just offering you a different kind of life, it's challenging your entire framework for understanding what life is supposed to be. This meta-level recognition brings a moment of clarity. Perhaps the real gift of this thought experiment isn't either option it presents, but the way it illuminates the usually invisible structure of your values and beliefs. In trying to decide whether to plug in, you're forced to become conscious of what you truly care about, what you're actually trying to accomplish with your existence. Most of the time, you live on autopilot, making choices based on habits and assumptions you've never consciously examined. You pursue goals without asking why they matter, avoid experiences without understanding what you're protecting, make decisions without recognizing what values are guiding them. The experience machine forces you to bring all of this into conscious awareness. In contemplating whether to accept perfect simulated experience, you discover what you really think about the relationship between experience and reality, between satisfaction and meaning, between individual fulfillment and participation in something larger than yourself. You uncover beliefs about human nature and the purpose of existence that have been operating beneath the surface of consciousness, shaping your choices without your awareness. This process of discovery might be more valuable than either choice you could make. Whether you plug in or stay unplugged, you'll never again live unconsciously. You'll never again take for granted the complex web of values and assumptions that guide your decisions. You'll approach every choice with greater awareness of what's at stake, what you're trying to preserve or achieve or become. The scientists mentioned that some people found the decision-making process more transformative than the decision itself. You begin to understand what they meant. The question has already changed you, already awakened aspects of your consciousness that were dormant, already forced you to engage with fundamental questions about the nature of human existence that you might otherwise have avoided your entire life. Perhaps this is what philosophy really offers. Not answers to life's deepest questions, but better questions, more conscious ways of engaging with the mysteries that surround us. The experience machine thought experiment doesn't solve the problem of how to live well, but it does make you more aware that this is a problem, that your choices matter in ways you might not have recognized. As the night deepens around you and the city outside settles into its quieter rhythms, you find yourself thinking about the billions of people who are living their lives right now without facing this explicit choice. They're making smaller versions of the same decision constantly, choosing between comfort and challenge, between the known and the unknown, between what feels good and what feels true. Most of them probably aren't conscious of these choices as philosophical decisions about the nature of reality and meaning. They're just trying to get through their days, to find some measure of happiness and satisfaction, to care for the people they love and pursue the goals that matter to them. Yet in their own way, they're all grappling with the same fundamental questions that the machine makes explicit. The office worker who stays in a job that pays well but doesn't inspire them is choosing a small version of the machine, prioritizing security and comfort over the uncertainty of pursuing their deeper aspirations. The person who ends a relationship because it's become too comfortable, too predictable, is choosing reality over a kind of experience machine, trading guaranteed pleasant companionship for the possibility of something more transformative. The parent who allows their child to struggle with difficult challenges rather than smoothing every obstacle from their path is making a choice about whether growth requires genuine difficulty or whether the experience of overcoming challenges is sufficient. The artist who continues to create despite lack of recognition is choosing to value the process of creation itself over the experience of being appreciated. All of these daily choices reflect different intuitions about what makes life worth living, different beliefs about the relationship between struggle and meaning, different assumptions about what human consciousness is for. The experience machine makes these usually implicit decisions explicit, forcing you to examine the philosophical foundations of how you approach existence itself. This recognition brings with it a profound sense of connection to the rest of humanity. Everyone is facing versions of this choice. Everyone is trying to figure out how to live well. Everyone is navigating the tension between what they want and what they think they should want, between immediate satisfaction and longer-term meaning. The machine offers a solution to this universal human dilemma, a way to bypass all the uncertainty and struggle and confusion that characterizes ordinary existence. It promises to give you exactly what you need to be perfectly fulfilled, eliminating the guesswork and error that make life so difficult. Yet in offering this solution, it might also be offering to remove you from the human community, to end your participation in the shared project of figuring out how to live well under conditions of uncertainty and limitation. You would no longer be struggling with the same questions that occupy everyone else, no longer learning through trial and error, no longer contributing your discoveries to the collective human understanding of what it means to exist consciously in a mysterious universe. This perspective adds a social dimension to your contemplation that you hadn't fully considered before. The choice isn't just about your individual fulfillment, but about your relationship to the larger human story. By staying unplugged, you would remain a participant in humanity's ongoing experiment with consciousness and meaning. By plugging in, you would become something else, something that might be better than human, but would no longer be human in the same sense. There's no moral judgment implied in this observation. Neither choice is inherently superior to the other. But there is a recognition that the choice has implications that extend beyond your personal satisfaction to questions about what kind of beings we are and what kind of future we want to create. If everyone chose the machine, the human story would essentially end, not in tragedy, but in perfect individual fulfillment. The species would cease to grow, to explore, to discover new possibilities for consciousness and meaning. We would achieve the ultimate goal of happiness and then remain there forever, each individual perfectly satisfied, but the collective journey of human development brought to a close. If everyone chose reality, the story would continue, with all the suffering and uncertainty and occasional breakthrough that characterizes human existence. We would remain question marks rather than becoming answer keys, would preserve our capacity for surprise and transformation and discovery, but at the cost of guaranteed individual fulfillment. Neither outcome is clearly preferable from some objective standpoint. Both represent valid ways of engaging with the mystery of consciousness and existence. The choice comes down to what you value more deeply: individual optimization or collective exploration, personal satisfaction or shared uncertainty, perfect experience or ongoing becoming. As you sit in the darkness contemplating this impossible decision, you realize that the choice itself has become a meditation on what it means to be conscious, what it means to exist as an aware being in a universe that offers no guarantees about meaning or purpose or ultimate destination. The machine and reality represent two different approaches to this fundamental uncertainty, two different ways of responding to the mystery of existence itself. And perhaps, in the end, that's all any of us can do: choose consciously how we want to engage with mystery, how we want to respond to the fact that we exist without knowing why or what we're supposed to do about it. Whether we choose the machine or choose reality, whether we opt for optimization or exploration, whether we prioritize certainty or preserve uncertainty, we're all just conscious beings trying to figure out what to do with the strange gift of awareness. The question waits patiently for your answer, but the question itself has already given you something irreplaceable. The recognition that you are choosing, always choosing, what kind of reality you want to inhabit and what kind of being you want to become. In that recognition lies a form of awakening that no machine could provide and no reality could take away. The streetlights outside have settled into their steady glow, and you find yourself aware of your own breathing in a way that feels almost meditative. There's something about sitting with an impossible choice that strips away the usual chatter of the mind, leaving behind a clarity that's both peaceful and profound. The experience machine waits in the realm of possibility, but your contemplation has begun to reveal something unexpected about the nature of waiting itself. You realize that much of your life has been spent in various forms of waiting. Waiting for the right opportunity, the right relationship, the right moment when everything would finally click into place and life would feel complete. The machine promises to end all waiting, to deliver you directly to the destination you've been seeking, without the journey that usually separates desire from fulfillment. But as you sit in this quiet space between choice and decision, you begin to wonder whether the waiting itself might be more essential than you'd ever recognized. Not the anxious waiting filled with worry and impatience, but this deeper kind of waiting that feels more like listening, more like being present to possibilities that haven't yet revealed themselves. In your ordinary life, you're often so focused on getting somewhere else, on becoming someone different, on achieving some future state of satisfaction, that you miss the subtle richness of existing right here in the uncertainty. The machine would eliminate this uncertainty entirely, but perhaps uncertainty isn't just an obstacle to overcome. Perhaps it's the space within which consciousness can explore its own depths. This insight brings with it a curious sense of gratitude for the very confusion you've been experiencing about this choice. The inability to decide definitively, the way the question keeps opening into new questions, the sense that every answer reveals new mysteries, all of this might be exactly what makes the choice valuable, regardless of which option you eventually select. You think about the moments in your life when you've been most fully present, most completely alive to the richness of experience. Often, these weren't moments of achievement or satisfaction, but moments of pure attention, when you were so engaged with what was happening that the usual division between self and world seemed to dissolve. These experiences couldn't be planned or manufactured. They arose spontaneously from a quality of openness that you couldn't control or predict. The machine could simulate such experiences, could provide you with the feeling of transcendent presence, but could it provide the genuine openness that allows these experiences to emerge naturally? There's something about the authentic moments of presence that seems to require the possibility of absence, the risk that you might miss what's being offered, the chance that your attention might wander or your heart might remain closed. Perhaps what you treasure most about consciousness isn't its capacity for happiness or even meaning, but its fundamental vulnerability, its openness to being touched and changed by whatever it encounters. This vulnerability makes consciousness precious but also fragile. It can be wounded, confused, overwhelmed, but it can also be surprised by beauty, moved by love, awakened to possibilities it never imagined. The machine would protect you from the wounds, but might also shield you from the surprises. It would give you perfect experiences, but might not be able to give you the capacity to be genuinely moved by them. The experiences would be optimal, but your relationship to them might become somehow less alive, less capable of the kind of deep responsiveness that makes consciousness feel like more than just a sophisticated information processing system. As you explore this line of thinking, you notice how the very act of contemplation has become a form of prayer, though not directed toward any particular deity or doctrine. It's more like a conversation with existence itself, an attempt to listen deeply enough to hear what life might be asking of you. The machine represents one possible answer to that asking, but staying present to the asking itself might be more important than any particular response. This recognition shifts something in your understanding of the choice. Instead of seeing it as a decision between two options, you begin to see it as an opportunity to practice the kind of deep listening that gives life its sacredness. Whether you choose the machine or choose reality matters less than the quality of attention you bring to the choosing. You find yourself thinking about the nature of trust and how this decision ultimately comes down to what you're willing to trust. The machine asks you to trust in optimization, in the possibility that happiness and fulfillment can be engineered and delivered. Reality asks you to trust in the unknown, in the possibility that consciousness itself knows how to navigate mystery in ways that rational planning cannot anticipate. Both forms of trust have their own dignity. Both represent reasonable responses to the fundamental uncertainty of existence. But as you sit with these different orientations, you notice which one resonates more deeply with something in your core. Not because you can prove it's correct, but because it aligns with a frequency that feels more fundamentally true to who you are. The scientists spoke of people who spent days or weeks with this decision, and you begin to understand that the extended contemplation isn't procrastination, but a form of ripening. Like fruit that needs time to develop its full sweetness, some choices require a period of patient consideration before they're ready to be made. The waiting isn't empty time, but time filled with the subtle work of allowing your deepest wisdom to emerge. You realize that you've been approaching this choice as if it were a problem to be solved through analysis and reasoning. But perhaps it's more like a piece of music that needs to be felt as much as understood, or a poem whose meaning emerges not from logical parsing but from patient attention to the spaces between the words. This shift in perspective brings a new kind of relaxation to your contemplation. Instead of trying to figure out the right answer, you find yourself simply listening to what the question is teaching you about yourself, about consciousness, about the mysterious nature of choice itself. The machine and reality become less like competing options and more like different notes in a complex harmony that you're learning to hear. The darkness outside has deepened, and the city has settled into its nocturnal rhythm. You can hear the distant hum of late-night traffic, the occasional footstep on the sidewalk below, the quiet breathing of a world that continues its ancient dance of sleeping and waking, dying and being born, questioning and discovering. You're part of this larger rhythm, part of something vast and patient and endlessly creative. In this expanded awareness, the urgency of choosing between the machine and reality begins to soften. Not because the choice doesn't matter, but because you're beginning to sense that whatever you choose will be held within something larger than choice itself, something that can work with whatever decision you make to continue the endless exploration of what it means to be conscious. This doesn't mean that all choices are equivalent or that your decision won't have consequences. It means that consciousness itself is resilient enough and creative enough to find meaning and beauty and growth within whatever circumstances it encounters. Whether you choose the optimized experience of the machine or the uncertain adventure of reality, you'll still be consciousness exploring its own possibilities. The recognition brings with it a profound sense of peace, not the peace of having found the right answer, but the peace of trusting that there is something in you wise enough to choose well, even if you can't understand all the implications of your choice. This trust doesn't eliminate the weight of decision, but changes your relationship to that weight, making it feel less like a burden and more like a sacred responsibility. You think about all the people throughout history who have faced their own versions of impossible choices, moments when they had to decide who they were going to be and how they were going to engage with existence. Most of them didn't have the luxury of extended contemplation that you're experiencing now. They had to choose quickly, in the midst of circumstances that were often chaotic and unclear. Yet somehow, many of them chose well. Not because they had perfect information or flawless reasoning, but because they were able to connect with something deeper than analysis, something that knew how to navigate uncertainty with a kind of intuitive wisdom that emerges when the surface mind becomes quiet enough to listen. You sense that same wisdom stirring within you now, not as a voice that speaks in words, but as a subtle knowing that permeates your entire being. It's not telling you what to choose, but it's preparing you to choose from a place of deeper authenticity than you might have accessed through reasoning alone. The machine continues to wait with its promise of perfect experience, and reality continues to unfold with its mixture of beauty and uncertainty. Both are patient. Both are willing to receive whatever choice emerges from your contemplation. Both represent ways of honoring the mysterious gift of consciousness. As you sit in the gentle darkness, feeling the weight of this decision settling around you like a comfortable blanket, you realize that the choice itself has become a form of meditation, a way of touching the deepest questions about what it means to exist as an aware being in an uncertain universe. Whether you say yes or no to the machine, you'll carry this depth of questioning with you into whatever reality you inhabit. And perhaps that's the real gift of this impossible choice. Not the opportunity to optimize your experience or preserve your authenticity, but the chance to become more conscious of consciousness itself, more aware of the miracle of being aware, more present to the ongoing mystery of what you are and what existence is asking of you. The question waits, patient as the darkness, gentle as the night air drifting through the window. But you're no longer in a hurry to answer it. You're learning to love the question itself, to find in its depths a richness that no answer, however perfect, could fully contain. In this space between choosing and not choosing, between knowing and not knowing, between the machine's promise and reality's mystery, you discover something that feels more precious than either option. The recognition that you're the kind of being capable of asking such questions, capable of caring deeply about how to live, capable of touching the infinite through the simple act of conscious attention. The night deepens around you, holding your contemplation in its gentle embrace, and you continue to sit with the impossible choice, grateful for its difficulty, honored by its weight, and increasingly aware that however you choose, you'll choose as someone who has been transformed by the depth of the choosing itself. The question has become your companion through this long night of contemplation, and as the hours have passed, you've begun to notice something curious happening. The very act of holding this choice in your awareness, of living with uncertainty rather than rushing toward resolution, has revealed aspects of consciousness that usually remain hidden beneath the busy surface of daily life. There's a quality of attention that emerges only when you're willing to dwell in not knowing, a form of awareness that's more spacious and patient than the goal-oriented thinking that dominates most of your waking hours. In this receptive state, insights arise not through logical deduction, but through a kind of gentle recognition, like memories surfacing from depths you didn't know existed within you. You find yourself reflecting on the nature of choice itself, and how rarely you've experienced the luxury of choosing without external pressure or artificial deadlines. Most of your life's important decisions have been made under the influence of circumstances that demanded quick resolution. You chose careers because opportunities arose, relationships because timing aligned, places to live because leases expired, or jobs required relocation. But here, in this suspended moment, you're free to choose purely from your own center, without the distorting pressure of practical constraints or social expectations. The scientists have given you the rarest of gifts, unlimited time to discover what you actually want, not what you think you should want or what circumstances force you to want. This freedom is both liberating and slightly overwhelming. Without external pressures to guide your decision, you're thrown back entirely on your own resources, forced to discover what values and desires are truly yours rather than adaptations to the world's demands. It's like being asked to remember who you were before you learned to be who others needed you to be. The machine offers to return you to some version of your authentic self, the person you would be if freed from all the compromises and adaptations that current circumstances require. But perhaps the more profound return to authenticity is happening right now, in this patient exploration of what you actually care about, when given the space to discover it without interference. You think about the concept of home and how it might apply to this choice. Where do you feel most at home in existence? Is it in states of satisfaction and fulfillment, in the warm comfort of needs met and desires satisfied? Or is it in something more elusive, more difficult to name? Perhaps in the dynamic tension between longing and discovery, in the ongoing conversation between what you are and what you might become. The machine promises to bring you home to perfect contentment, but as you explore your relationship to contentment, you notice that your most vivid memories aren't of times when everything was going well. They're of moments when you were fully engaged with whatever was happening, whether pleasant or difficult. Moments when you were so present that the usual sense of separation between yourself and your experience dissolved. These memories suggest that home might not be a destination, but a quality of presence, not a state to be achieved, but a way of being available to whatever arises. If this is true, then the machine's promise to deliver you to a perfect home might miss the point entirely. The home you're really seeking might be found not in optimized circumstances, but in the capacity to be fully present to any circumstances. This insight brings with it a subtle shift in how you hold the choice before you. Instead of trying to determine which option would make you happier or more fulfilled, you begin to sense into which choice would allow you to remain most present, most available to the ongoing mystery of what existence might offer. The machine would certainly provide experiences that feel present and engaged, but they would be experiences crafted to match your current understanding of what presence and engagement should feel like. Reality offers the possibility of forms of presence you haven't yet imagined, ways of being engaged that might surprise you, forms of aliveness that lie beyond your present capacity to conceive. You notice how this line of thinking connects to something you've always sensed about growth and learning. The most profound changes in your life have come not when you achieved goals you had set for yourself, but when you encountered something that reorganized your entire understanding of what goals were worth pursuing. These encounters couldn't have been planned because they required you to discover capacities and values you didn't know you possessed. The machine could provide you with the satisfaction of achieving your current goals, but it couldn't provide you with the possibility of discovering that your current goals are too small, that you're capable of caring about things you haven't yet learned to care about, that your vision of what makes life worth living might expand in ways you can't currently imagine. This realization brings you face to face with one of the deepest aspects of the choice, whether you want to become a completed person or remain an unfinished one. The machine offers completion, the perfect expression of everything you currently are and want. Reality offers the chance to remain unfinished, always in the process of becoming something that surprises even you. There's something both frightening and exhilarating about choosing to remain unfinished. Frightening because it means accepting that you'll never achieve the security of knowing exactly who you are or what you want. Exhilarating because it means staying open to possibilities that could transform your understanding of what it means to be you. As you sit with this recognition, you begin to notice how it illuminates patterns in your past choices. The times you felt most alive haven't been when you were most certain about your direction, but when you were willing to step into uncertainty because something called to you from beyond your current understanding. The times you felt most stagnant have been when you tried to hold on to identities or circumstances that felt safe but no longer served your growth. Perhaps what you're really being asked to choose between isn't happiness and meaning, or reality and simulation, but completion and continuation. The machine offers to complete you, to deliver you to a state where all your questions are answered and all your needs are met. Reality offers to let you continue, to remain in the ongoing conversation between who you are and who you might become. The night air drifting through the window carries with it the scents of the city. Car exhaust and restaurant kitchens, flowering trees, and the ozone smell that precedes rain. These ordinary fragrances suddenly seem precious, not because they're particularly beautiful, but because they're real in a way that connects you to something larger than your individual consciousness. You realize that one of the things you'd miss most about reality isn't any particular experience it provides, but the way it connects you to everything else that exists. The air you breathe has been breathed by countless other beings. The elements in your body were forged in the hearts of stars. The thoughts arising in your mind are shaped by languages and concepts developed by thousands of generations of human consciousness. In reality, you're never really alone, never completely separate from the vast web of existence that surrounds and includes you. The machine could simulate this sense of connection, could provide you with the feeling of being part of something larger, but it couldn't provide the actual connection itself. You would be alone with your perfect experiences, however convincing they might feel. This perspective adds another dimension to your contemplation. The choice isn't just about your individual fulfillment, but about your participation in the larger community of consciousness that includes not just other humans, but all the forms of awareness that have ever emerged from the mystery of existence itself. By staying unplugged, you would remain part of this community, contributing your unique perspective to the ongoing exploration of what consciousness can become. Your struggles and discoveries, your failures and breakthroughs would become part of the collective learning that helps consciousness understand itself more fully. The machine would remove you from this community, not in any cruel or punishing way, but simply by making your experience entirely self-contained. You would no longer be learning things that could benefit other conscious beings because your experiences would be crafted specifically for your individual psychology, rather than emerging from genuine encounters with otherness. There's something both humbling and inspiring about recognizing yourself as part of this larger community of consciousness. Humbling because it puts your individual concerns in perspective, showing them as part of a much vaster story. Inspiring because it suggests that your choices matter not just to you, but to the ongoing evolution of awareness itself. You think about the people in your life who have influenced you most profoundly, and you realize that their impact came not from providing you with perfect experiences, but from challenging you to see beyond your current limitations. They loved you enough to refuse to let you settle for less than you were capable of becoming, even when that refusal made both of you uncomfortable. The machine would love you perfectly, but would never challenge you to grow beyond your current capacity for receiving love. It would accept you completely as you are, which sounds wonderful until you consider that the version of you that exists right now might not be the version most capable of giving and receiving love. That version might only emerge through the challenging process of learning to love and be loved by beings who exist independently of your desires and needs. Real love, you begin to understand, isn't just about acceptance, but about invitation. The people who love you most deeply are constantly inviting you to become more than you currently are, not because they reject who you are now, but because they see possibilities in you that you might not see in yourself. The machine could provide you with the experience of being loved in this transformative way, but it couldn't provide the genuine otherness required for such love to be real rather than simulated. It couldn't surprise you with insights about yourself that emerge only through the unpredictable encounter with consciousness that operates according to its own logic rather than yours. As dawn begins to approach, painting the eastern sky with the faintest suggestion of light, you find yourself thinking about cycles, about the way consciousness seems to require alternation between different states and experiences. Sleep and waking, solitude and companionship, effort and rest, certainty and doubt, all seem necessary for the full flowering of awareness. The machine would optimize these cycles, giving you exactly the right balance of different experiences at exactly the right times. But perhaps the optimization itself would eliminate something essential about the natural rhythm of consciousness, something that emerges only when these cycles unfold according to their own organic timing, rather than according to designed perfection. You notice how your own contemplation tonight has followed its own natural rhythm, moving through different phases of questioning and insight, doubt and clarity, anxiety and peace. This rhythm couldn't have been planned or optimized. It emerged from the genuine encounter between your consciousness and the complexity of the choice you're facing. The machine could simulate this kind of natural unfolding, but simulation might miss something crucial about the way consciousness actually works, something that requires genuine uncertainty and genuine risk to fully manifest. Perhaps consciousness is most itself not when it's perfectly satisfied, but when it's engaged in the ongoing dance between knowing and not knowing, between having and seeking, between being and becoming. The first birds begin to sing outside your window, their calls weaving together into the daily symphony that marks the transition from night to day. There's something unutterably beautiful about this sound, not because it's particularly melodious, but because it represents the continuation of patterns that are older than human consciousness, rhythms that connect you to the deep time of evolution and emergence. In the machine, you could experience birdsong that was even more beautiful, more perfectly crafted to move and inspire you. But it wouldn't be the song of creatures who had learned to sing through millions of years of adaptation and survival, creatures whose music emerges from the same source that gave rise to your own capacity for awareness and choice. This connection to deep time, to the vast story of consciousness emerging from matter and learning to know itself, suddenly feels precious in a way that's difficult to articulate. By staying unplugged, you would remain part of this story, contributing your small verse to the epic poem that consciousness is writing about its own nature and possibilities. The machine would give you a perfect poem crafted just for you, but you would no longer be a co-author of the larger poem that includes all conscious beings in their ongoing exploration of what it means to exist and to know that you exist. As the light continues to grow outside, you realize that your contemplation has brought you to a place of clarity that feels different from the analytical certainty you might have expected. It's more like the clarity that comes from finally relaxing into something you've been resisting, the relief of discovering that you don't have to figure everything out, that you can trust something deeper than reasoning to guide your choice. This doesn't mean the choice is easy or obvious. It means that you've discovered a way of approaching it that feels more aligned with the actual nature of consciousness and choice than the goal-oriented problem-solving you started with. You're choosing not from fear or desire, but from a deeper sense of what wants to emerge through you. What form of existence feels most true to the mystery of what you are? The scientists will return soon, patient and understanding as they've been throughout this long night of contemplation. They'll accept whatever choice you make with the same gentle respect they've shown for the complexity of the decision itself, But you know now that whatever you tell them, you'll be choosing as someone who has been fundamentally changed by the depth of the choosing itself. The question has become a doorway into aspects of consciousness you might never have discovered otherwise, and stepping through that doorway has revealed landscapes of possibility you didn't know existed within you. Whether you ultimately say yes or no to the experience machine, you'll carry these discoveries with you into whatever reality you choose to inhabit. The morning light continues to strengthen, and with it comes the recognition that some questions are more valuable than any answer they might generate. The experience machine has given you such a question, and in wrestling with it through this long night, you've discovered something more precious than either the perfect simulation it offers or the imperfect reality you currently inhabit. You've discovered the inexhaustible depth of consciousness itself, the endless mystery of what it means to be aware, to choose, to care about how you exist in the world. This discovery will remain with you regardless of which path you take, a gift that transforms every subsequent moment into an opportunity for deeper presence and more conscious engagement with the mystery of being alive. The choice still waits, patient as the dawn, but you're no longer the same person who began this contemplation. The question itself has been your teacher, and its greatest lesson is that consciousness is far more mysterious, far more precious, and far more creative than you ever imagined. Whatever you choose now, you'll choose with this recognition illuminating every aspect of your decision. The morning light filters through the window with gentle persistence, and you find yourself in that liminal space between night's deep contemplation and day's approaching clarity. Your body has grown stiff from hours of sitting, but your mind feels more awake than it has in years, alive with the kind of awareness that comes only from dwelling deeply within questions too profound for easy answers. You stand slowly, stretching muscles that have been holding the weight of this impossible decision, and walk to the window. The city below is beginning its daily resurrection, people emerging from their homes to continue their own versions of the eternal human project of trying to figure out how to live well. Each person down there carries their own constellation of hopes and fears, dreams and disappointments, questions about meaning and purpose that they may never articulate but that shape every choice they make. From this elevated perspective, you can see the beautiful ordinariness of human existence playing out in miniature. A woman walking her dog pauses to let the animal investigate something fascinating in the grass. A man in a business suit checks his phone, then looks up at the sky as if remembering something important about weather or time, or the simple fact of being alive on a Tuesday morning. Two children race each other to a school bus, their laughter carrying up through the still air like a prayer of pure joy. These small moments of life continuing to unfold in their ancient patterns suddenly seem incredibly precious. Not because they're perfect or optimized or designed to produce maximum happiness, but because they're real in the deepest sense of that word. They're emerging from the genuine encounter between consciousness and circumstance, between human hopes and the world's complex response to those hopes. The machine could create scenes just like these, could populate your simulated reality with people walking dogs and checking phones and children racing to buses. The experiences would feel identical, would generate the same sense of witnessing life in all its ordinary beauty. But something would be missing, some essential quality that you're only now beginning to recognize as irreplaceable. Perhaps what would be missing is the knowledge that these moments exist within the vast web of cause and consequence that connects all things, that the woman walking her dog is part of the same unfolding story that includes your contemplation at this window, that the man checking his phone might receive news that changes his life in ways that ripple out to touch other lives in patterns too complex for any mind to fully trace. In the machine, your experiences would be islands of perfect satisfaction, each crafted specifically for your enjoyment, but disconnected from the larger current of existence that gives individual moments their weight and significance. You would be living in a universe with a population of one, however convincingly that universe might simulate the presence of others. A gentle knock at the door interrupts your reverie. The scientists have returned as promised, carrying the same quiet patience they displayed yesterday, the same respectful recognition that the choice you're facing cannot and should not be rushed. They settle back into their chairs without asking for your decision, content to wait until you're ready to share whatever you've discovered through your night of contemplation. One of them mentions, almost casually, that they've been observing something interesting about people who spend extended time considering their offer. Regardless of which choice they ultimately make, they often report that the decision-making process itself has awakened something in them that remains active long after the choice is made. A heightened awareness of what it means to choose consciously, a deeper appreciation for the mystery of consciousness itself. This observation resonates with something you've been sensing throughout your contemplation. The real transformation isn't waiting in either option the scientists are offering. It's happening right now in this very process of wrestling with fundamental questions about the nature of reality and meaning and authentic existence. The machine may promise perfect experience, but the questioning itself has already provided something that feels more valuable than any experience, however perfectly crafted. You find yourself thinking about the nature of gifts, and how the most profound ones are often not what they initially appear to be. The scientist came offering you the gift of perfect happiness, but they've actually given you something far more precious, the opportunity to discover depths within your own consciousness that might have remained forever hidden without this catalyst for deep reflection. The gift isn't the machine or the choice to reject it. The gift is the awakening to the extraordinary mystery of what you are, the recognition that consciousness itself is far more strange and wonderful and creative than you ever suspected. This awakening will continue to unfold regardless of which path you choose, colouring every subsequent moment with a quality of presence and appreciation that no external circumstance could provide or take away. As you prepare to share your decision with the waiting scientist, you realise that the choice has already been made at a level deeper than conscious reasoning, not through analysis or comparison of options, but through the gradual recognition of what feels most aligned with the fundamental frequency of your being. The decision emerges not as something imposed by your will, but as something that wants to be born through you, the natural expression of everything you've discovered about yourself through this process of deep questioning. You understand now that both options carry their own form of wisdom, their own valid response to the mystery of human existence. Neither is inherently superior to the other, but one resonates with something in your core that you're only now learning to trust, something that knows how to navigate uncertainty with a kind of intuitive clarity that transcends rational calculation. As the morning light grows stronger and the world outside awakens to another day of ordinary miracles, you find yourself settling into a quiet certainty that feels less like a decision and more like a recognition of what was always true. The experience machine, with all its perfect promises, begins to fade like a dream upon waking, not because it offers too little, but because you've discovered something that no machine could ever replicate or replace. You've awakened to the infinite depth of this moment, this breath, this simple act of being conscious and choosing how to meet existence on its own mysterious terms. Whether you plug into perfect simulation or remain in imperfect reality matters far less than the profound awareness you'll carry forward, the recognition that you are always choosing, always participating in the endless creation of what it means to be alive. And perhaps that recognition, more than any answer, is the true gift of an impossible question that taught you to treasure the asking itself. Sweet dreams, fellow travellers in consciousness. May your own impossible questions guide you gently toward whatever wisdom awaits in the space between sleeping and waking.